There we go. So chapter review is a little bit more of an overview still, much like chapter 1. Chapter 3 finally starts getting into some specifics, some different parts of this framework that we talked about at the beginning of chapter 2. So 3 is going to deal mostly with mandates. And let me minimize my friends on chat here. So this chapter is going to talk about why different media groups, why different media companies, why different TV stations, radio stations, movie studios, record companies, why do they do what they do? And the simple answer for most of it is so they can make money. For profit. But there are some companies that, or there are some stations and studios that have other purposes in mind other than just to make money. And then there are some companies whose primary goal is to make money, but there is some debate as to whether or not that should be their primary goal. And one of the debates we've had for several years now, going back through the Obama administration and even into the W. Bush administration, is whether or not the internet should be a public utility. Whether or not internet service providers, like our darling Suddenlink, by the way, I forgot to call Saturday, but I was all ready to call yesterday and get really, really angry with him over my bill. And then I was on hold for like 10 minutes before the recording finally came on and said, our billing department is closed on Sundays. Please try again. So yeah, I'm still upset with Suddenlink, but who isn't? Who isn't? Who out there in Zoom world isn't upset with Suddenlink? I mean, come on. That's what they're there for. And so here goes the chats. But the question is, should companies really be making money off the internet, supplying it to us? Is it a necessity? Are we using it more now? And certainly when AOL was a thing, when they would mail discs to your home in the late 90s to get on the internet and do the dial-up stuff, most of us were just using it for entertainment purposes. But then we started using it for everyday utilitarian needs. And I've been seeing and reading more commentary, some academic commentary, some down with the tyranny. We're going to start a revolution. We're going to start our own ISP in this class. Forget the group projects. This is everybody's final project now for this class. Start your own ISP. Make me want to pay $150 for your internet service provider. But I've been seeing commentary this past 6 months that this pandemic has made it clear, ever more clear, that everybody in a community needs to have equal access to the internet, because we're not just using it for entertainment purposes anymore. At-risk folks who don't want to go to grocery stores need it to get food, need it to get medication. All right, we've been using the internet to pay our bills now for at least a decade. And what is a public utility? Well, landline phone service is probably the best example of it. Something that is provided to the community at very, very minimal cost. If you want landline phone service, all you pretty much got to do is buy a phone. One of those old rotary things, or the push buttons. Those were nice too. What about the old days before cable? All you had to do to get your local NBC station, your local CBS station, your local ABC station, and your local PBS station was to buy a TV, plug it in. Maybe those little rabbit antenna things at the top, you had to twist them just right to get the signal to come in. But you didn't have to pay for those TV stations. Why not? Well, the government determined that that was a source of information that people needed. Because sure, you had your game shows and you had your soap operas, you had your sitcoms, but you also had, on your local NBC, ABC affiliates, you also had 3 or 4 hours of news every day. You had an hour or two in the morning when you woke up. You probably had an evening news around 5 or 6. And you probably had a nighttime news around 9 or 10 right before you went to bed. So the government thought a public's need for information was met by them having free access, other than having to buy a television, free access to those local stations. So those local broadcast stations were treated as a public utility. Of course, the worry is with the internet and the ISPs like Suddenlink, like Cox and Comcast and whomever. The worry is that if we don't make the internet a public utility, then those ISPs will be able to charge whatever they want, will be able to throttle web services. In other words, create tiers, create payment tiers. If you want even faster internet, then maybe instead of $80 a month, you got to pay $120 a month. If you want basic internet service that's really, really slow, I believe Suddenlink calls that their premium service, then that's fine. You can pay $50 a month, you can pay $60 a month for slow internet, but at least you have internet. Those who want to make the internet a public utility say that everyone should have access to the same internet and the same speeds and the same websites. I guess there's also a worry that ISPs might slow down websites with political opinions that might disagree with them, or slow down other entertainment websites. So there has been a push over the last decade or so, probably longer, to make the internet a public utility, much like phone service. The question is, should it be? Should high-speed internet be provided to the public in the same way that we have schools and libraries and roads? Or should we continue on our ISP pay rate? And trust me, as someone, and I'm sure I'm not alone looking at chat, I'm definitely not alone. As someone who has dealt with an ISP, internet service provider, recently, you tell them you just want internet, and that's just not a good enough answer. What, you don't want cable? Cable is the future. Let me bundle some cable with your internet. You'll like that a lot better. Hey, have you heard of the telephone? You can call people. We'll bundle that too. It's landline stuff. It's really futuristic. So it's never just internet, right? I mean, look, they are salespeople. It's their job to get the most money out of you. And the question is, should an ISP be doing that to the public? Because the question goes, if not everyone has equal access to the same speed internet, then is the digital divide just going to keep growing? So what is this digital divide? You can think of it as the difference between the haves and the have-nots when it comes to really any kind of technological service. But obviously we're speaking about it in terms of the internet here. What about folks who still have dial-up? I made fun of dial-up a few minutes ago. I'm sure there are still folks in remote parts of this state and remote parts of other states in this country that might still have some dial-up internet service. We've made fun of Blockbuster a little bit last week and the week before, because it's fun to make fun of companies that used to be really, really popular, and now we have no use for them anymore. But there were a couple of Blockbusters still hanging on over the past few years. There was only one Blockbuster left in the entire USA. It's in Bend, Oregon. And it's really just being kept open as a novelty, I think. Because people in Oregon do have the internet and they do have Netflix. So it's really just kind of a novelty that it's kept open, but apparently folks who live in that town still go there just to keep it going. But prior to that, there were also two in the state of Alaska. So the last three Blockbusters in the US, one was the one that's still open in Oregon, and the other two were in Alaska. The two in Alaska weren't so much a novelty as a necessity. Because you want to talk about some rugged terrain, that's Alaska. You want to talk about a state that, due to its rugged terrain, had some pretty spotty Wi-Fi connections, that's Alaska. So if you lived in remote parts of Alaska, or mountainous parts of Alaska, and you had Wi-Fi, but it was pretty spotty, you could either suffer through watching a movie on Netflix and have it go out on you, or have it buffer for 20 minutes, or you could go to Blockbuster and get a DVD and watch a movie from start to finish uninterrupted. And that's what people did. When the Wi-Fi wasn't working for them, the DVDs, and I would even assume in some cases VHS, but probably DVDs, the DVDs worked well for them. But eventually, Alaska's Wi-Fi caught up, and those two Blockbusters that were in Alaska eventually went out of business. So now we just have the novelty one in Oregon. But that's an example of a digital divide that really isn't anyone's fault, except it just happens to be influenced by where you live, through no fault of your own. So that's one aspect of the divide. Another aspect of the divide could be just economics. What if you can't afford a laptop? What if you can't afford a desktop computer? We talked about libraries as public utilities in the last slide. What if that's how you get your internet? Go to a public library. So digital divides could be financial, could be technical. What if you don't have the skills to use the technology? I'm not trying to sound insulting when I say this, but I mean, look, older folks sometimes have difficulty with technology. If you've ever tried to teach a grandparent about social media, or back when I was growing up, if you tried to teach when I was in college or high school, if you tried to teach a grandparent how to send an email, just as we get older, we're slower to adapt to new technology. So it's skills-based too. So what do? I think of school district as well. Some school districts have more money and can afford more technologies for their students. Maybe in some wealthy school districts, some wealthy schools, every student can get an iPad. Maybe in other school districts that aren't as fortunate, there's a room full of laptops that students have to share at particular times. So all that can contribute to the digital divide. So what can we do to make sure that everyone has access to the internet at the same speed? And, you know, not really a solution, but a couple of questions. Can we allocate more tax money for public internet? Can we make a deal with the ISPs, with the internet service providers? Hey, if we're not going to make the internet a public utility, can you all give us your word that you won't create this tiered system of internet service and charge people for faster internet and punish people who can't afford a steeper bill by giving them slower internet? So these are questions that need answering, because certainly in the late 90s, I can remember the internet being a thing that you had to get on. And you had to make sure other members of your home didn't also need to get on the internet. Because that was the beauty of dial-up. Only one person could use it at the time. And if someone had to make a phone call, then you had to get off the internet because it was on the same line as your phone. And if someone called your home while you were on the internet, sometimes it kicked you off. So the internet was this thing that we had to access. Now, we almost look at it as a right. And if you share a home or an apartment with 2 or 3 or 4 other people, you can certainly all be on it at the same time. And yeah, throughout the span of a 24-hour day, we might use it more for entertainment. But that doesn't mean, and especially during these very strange times over the past 6 or 7 months, that more and more people don't need it for utilitarian needs, for food, for medicine. I mean, I have probably ordered more stuff from Amazon in the past 2 months than I had in the previous 2 years. Because I'm still kind of a fan of going out to stores and buying stuff. I like to see stuff that I buy. Over the past 6 months, I have not been a fan of going into public places. So Amazon and curbside delivery from H-E-B have been my saviors. Now, I could go out to a store. I think I'm fairly low risk for this virus, knock on wood, or whatever this lectern is made out of, probably not wood. But the high-risk folks, the older folks, they don't have that luxury. So the internet becomes something of a need for them. All right, let's see what's going on in chat. Yes, F is for laugh. Did I say something funny? But yes, F is for laugh, correct. All right, so getting into our discussion of mandates. And you can ask yourself these three same questions as we talk about mandates and as we talk about practices next chapter and we talk about other aspects of the media. So who pays for media? Whom does the media serve? And what determines media success? So one of the mandates we talked about last week, commercial mandates, is advertiser-based. Is it correct to say that advertisers pay for commercial media? Not exactly. You do. You pay for commercial mandates. Yes, advertisers do pay money to networks, cable stations, for the right to advertise their product. But they recoup that money by jacking up the price of their products for us. So we pay inflated prices. So really, the money that the advertisers pay to the TV stations, pay to the networks, pay to the cable stations, doesn't really hurt them that much. Because they know they will make that money back from us. And advertisers also know when to try to pitch their products to us. There's one thing I miss about the 90s and probably the early 2000s too, although I'm sure they're still around somewhere, were infomercials. Infomercials were the best because they were like 30-minute TV shows that sold just one product. And they were usually on at like 2 or 3 in the morning. So they were strictly for insomniacs or folks who worked the late shift who had just gotten home, or folks who worked a really, really early shift and were just getting up. And oftentimes, these infomercials would generally sell one of two items, either some sort of food cooking device. Why is that? Well, if you're up at 2 in the morning, you're probably hungry. If you can't sleep, next best thing to do is open the fridge and see what's in it. Or some sort of get-rich-quick scheme. You could become a millionaire overnight if you just ordered these VHS tapes. And why not? You're up at 2 in the morning, so if you're up at 2 in the morning, you're obviously worried about something, and we generally worry most about finances. So they know exactly when to target folks too. And of course, advertisers will target you during your favorite TV show, and they will target certain demographics. Let's see. Magic Makeup, I missed that. ShamWow, yes. ShamWow, and he also did the, God, what was it? Was he the Slap Chop guy too? I think he was the Slap Chop guy too, which is, again, was another magic cooking device that was going to save you hours in the kitchen. Yeah, so the 90s and the early 2000s were the heyday for infomercials. Yeah, Billy Mays was a big one too, and then Billy Mays died about 10 years ago, and infomercials haven't been the same since. So we will pay any ridiculous price for anything we see advertised on TV. But we'll also pay subscription rates too. And I've been thinking about this over the past couple of months, because as you know by now, I moved into a new place about 5 weeks ago. and I decided to cancel cable. Suddenlink doesn't know this yet, but I have decided to cancel cable. I mean, they do know it because I don't have cable. But I also know that the majority of my TV viewing over the past month or so has been Hulu and Amazon Prime. I don't think I have watched Netflix once. I may have checked it out just to see what's on, but I don't think I've watched anything on Netflix in at least a month, maybe 2 months. But yesterday I just happened to look at my bank statement online and noticed that my payday for Netflix came and went. $12.99 already charged me. And $12.99 is not that big a deal, but I stopped and looked at it and thought, I don't really watch Netflix anymore. I should probably cancel this, but I won't. I'll forget as soon as this lecture is over. I'll go back to my office. I'll forget that I paid $12.99 to Netflix, and I won't remember that anything about Netflix until they charge me $12.99 next month. Because that's just how it works with automatic withdrawal. Not that big a deal when it's Hulu, because I can see Hulu charging me $12.99 next month or next week and going, yeah, you know what? I do watch Hulu a lot. But streaming services, pay services like HBO and Showtime, we're supporting them as well with our monthly fees. And since most of our monthly fees now are automatically withdrawn from our checking accounts, we just keep funding them, even if we're not watching them as much anymore. Got a lot in chat. Slap Chop, Roku, watch Jack Ryan. Haven't watched Jack Ryan yet. $12.99 to watch ads. Yeah. I can't believe Slap Chop is this popular. I think the salesperson, I can't remember his name, but the guy that hosted the Slap Chop and the ShamWow, same dude, I'm pretty sure. I think he sold the product more than the product. He had a personality that, I don't know, people kind of like Billy Mays. People just liked Billy Mays, so they would buy whatever he was selling, right? That's the power of a good spokesperson. Yeah, I remember watching the infomercials for Slap Chop and thinking, do I really need to dice an apple this bad? Who am I going to invite over that wants fruit salad? None of my friends ever want to come over to my place and eat fruit salad. It's mostly just pizza and wings. Again, the power of a good spokesperson. All right. So remember this term, a dual product market. Because every commercial piece of media that is supported by advertisers are really selling two items. They are selling the media product, so the TV show, newspaper, magazine, and they are selling, believe it or not, you. You are being sold to advertisers. And even if you don't watch broadcast television or cable television, you're still being sold to advertisers on Amazon, you're still being sold on Netflix by Netflix and on Hulu by Hulu. Because you can't just watch one show without Hulu or Netflix recommending 5 or 6 other shows that they think you would like. So you are constantly being pitched to. And if you're still watching cable, if you're still watching broadcast TV, then obviously advertisers have done their market research. They know the demographics that watch a certain program, or in the glory days of cable, when we had 100, 150 different cable channels, they knew the demographic that was watching a particular channel. They knew guys in their 20s and maybe 30s were watching Spike TV for explosions in MMA. And they knew that women, maybe 50s, 60s, 70s, once Lifetime started pretty much revolving around reruns of the Golden Girls, they knew the audience that was watching that station too. Now, the demographics of a particular station can change depending on the formatting. We talked about formatting with radio last week, where sometimes your favorite top 40 radio station suddenly becomes an all talk, maybe all sports or all political talk. Certain cable stations have done that too. Yeah, I like a good fruit salad, but yeah, I'm not inviting my friends over for fruit salad, I think. But if I'm hungry at 2 in the morning, fruit salad is certainly a better option than the kettle potato chips I keep in my pantry. What about cable stations that change their format? When I was a teenager, maybe even into my young adulthood, we had a cable station called Arts and Entertainment, and it truly stuck to its word. It was mostly opera and Shakespeare and Broadway and truly arts and entertainment. And my dad was a big opera buff, so in the evenings he would switch on Arts and Entertainment and watch Pavarotti or one of the tenors perform somewhere, and that was one of his favorite stations. And then like 5 years after that, once the reality TV show bug bit every studio executive, Arts and Entertainment, by then they were known as A&E, because abbreviations are always better, right? There's no more Kentucky Fried Chicken, it's just KFC now. So anytime you can abbreviate something, it gives it more power. So Arts and Entertainment became A&E. And then all of a sudden, the only thing you could find on A&E was Duck Dynasty. A bunch of guys with long beards somewhere in the backwoods of Louisiana making duck calls. So no more opera. No more Shakespeare. No more arts. You could argue the entertainment part. But pretty soon, all cable channels decided to jump on the reality show bandwagon. And their demographics changed almost overnight. My dad went looking for Pavarotti, and he found, what's the guy's name, Phil Robertson? Not exactly what he was looking for. And my dad used to duck hunt many, many, many years ago, but still wasn't what he was looking for. So especially cable channels, and especially since cable is a dying medium, they've had to switch up how they do business. They've had to change formats, much like radio has had to change formats over the years too. Pawn Stars is good, yeah. That was the one reality show that my family could sit around and watch, and everyone would be into it. Yes, Pawn Stars. But for the most part, this is the targeted demographic of every commercial mandate. The coveted 18 to 34-year-olds. Why? I was once 18. I didn't have any money. I was also once 22, 23. I still didn't have any money. Why would advertisers target me? At 18 or 19? Because they were targeting me so I could target my parents, because they were the ones with the money. As you get a little bit older, in your 20s, right around 30, hopefully you're starting a career. Maybe you're a few years into your career. Maybe don't have a family yet. Maybe married, maybe not. Maybe married but don't have any kids yet. So what you got? You got disposable income. You got money to burn that you're not spending on kids. So advertisers want to talk to you about all these wonderful products that they sell. What about older folks? What about seniors in their 60s and 70s who've been working for the past 40 years and saved up a good amount? Why aren't they the ones that advertisers crave? Well, anymore. Older folks could be living on a fixed income. We're still arguing about it. Okay, Chopped too. Yes, Chopped. Okay, Pawn Stars and Chopped. That was the. Those are the two reality shows that my family could agree on. Yes. Older folks might be on more fixed income. Social Security. So sometimes they don't have the disposable income that younger folks do. But not just any 18 to 34-year-old. They're looking at folks who earn a bit of a higher income. Looking at folks who are college educated, because of course the assumption is if you have a college degree, you probably have a better job. And if you have a better job, you probably make more money than someone who didn't go to college. So this is the prime demographic for the commercial mandate. And it's 10:05. I think I'm going to leave it here. I think this is a good place to stop, because I think we're just going to get into more information on the next slide that maybe you don't have time to write down. So stop recording now.